footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, bringing you a 2011 draft preview of the wide receiver prospects. We're going to go through the top 10 list. We're going to also show you sleepers and some small school prospects that you want to keep an eye on. So let's just jump right into my list and see who I have number 1 on my draft board. AJ Green is the number 1 wide receiver in this class, and that goes without saying. One thing that jumps out at you on film is his ability to control his body, especially when going across the middle, and to snatch the football out of the air with his hands. That's a unique trait that he has, a game breaker in its true sense of the word, which is why he's number 1. Now, Julio Jones is a guy that's 6'4", 222 out of Alabama. Some think he maxed out his potential, but I think he still has some room to grow. He has to just remain consistent when catching the football. One thing that plagued him at Alabama, but he is still a tremendous playmaker. Jonathan Baldwin is a 6'5", 230-pound target. Reminds me a lot of Marcus Colson. He has great hands, great body control. He's physical. He's not quick, but most guys that are 6'5", 230 pounds are not that quick as far as like running routes. But he's a guy that can make the big play down the field and has enough speed to take it the distance. Gragg is one of my favorite wide receivers because he used to be a former running back, so he brings that same type of physicality to the wide receiver position, a guy that has tremendous run after the catch skills. He's still growing as a receiver, but you get the football in his hands any way you can, and he can make it happen. You see right there, big play against North Carolina State. Reminds me a lot of Ronald Johnson in the way he's built, plus his ability to make that big play and out-physical a cornerback. Now, Austin Pettis is a guy that reminds me a lot of Chris Carter, because of his ability to catch the football at any point, highest point, doesn't matter, always making a very clutch play, kept Boise State, kept these guys ahead of the chains, helped Kellen Moore out. Look at that, over the defender. He can bring that same type of athleticism to the NFL. He doesn't have the elite speed, but as far as like from 20 to 20, he will make that tough catch, as you see right here against Fresno State. Jerrel Jernigan is a guy that has been on the NFL radar for the last 2 years, tore up the Sun Belt Conference with his quickness. He's fearless going across the middle. One thing he has to work on, though, is his route running ability. He ran a lot of crossing routes at Troy, but you get the football in this young man's hands, and he can really make the first guy miss. He keeps the defense off balance because he can outrun zone, and he can outrun man coverage. Should be a tremendous playmaker in the NFL. Leonard Hankerson had an outstanding Senior Bowl. One thing that struck me as like outstanding is his acceleration. He can get to his speed, which is probably about a 4.5 faster than the cornerbacks can get to their 4.3. So he's going to be a solid number 2 target. Does everything well. Reminds me a lot of John Taylor in his ability to make consistent plays. Now, Titus Young is another guy that had an outstanding Senior Bowl week. Everybody wants to compare him to Deshaun Jackson, but I think he doesn't have the talent as a receiver as Jackson had. He's more like Eddie Royal. He has okay hands. He gets banged up a lot, but a guy that can also make the first guy miss and will make a lot of big plays on special teams. And if you get him on those bubble screens and those quick screens, he could do a lot of damage, can tear up a secondary, should be a tremendous player in the NFL. Now, San Diego State had an outstanding year, and it's due to their talented wide receiver, Vincent Brown, a guy that reminds me a lot of Donald Driver because he's very consistent. Great hands. His route running for a collegiate is outstanding. One thing he doesn't have is that initial quickness or that suddenness, but he does everything exceptionally well. Any team that drafts him is going to get a steal, is going to get a guy that's very consistent, that can play for at least 10 to 12 years in the league for that same team because he's that type of player. Now, here's some other wide receivers you want to keep an eye on. We're going to start with Ronald Johnson, 5'11", 188 out of USC, a guy that has a lot of return ability and is also a very fluid runner. He's a natural runner, but he doesn't catch the ball well with his hands. He's a body catcher, which is why I compared him to DeAndre Henderson. Yes, he can hurt the opposing defenses with the big play, but he can also hurt the offenses with a key drop in a clutch situation. The most intriguing target in this draft is DeAndre Brown, 6'6", 240. Had it not been for that gruesome leg injury he had 2 years ago, he'd be a first-round pick. He has some character concerns, but as far as a true playmaker, physical guy, reminds me a lot of Calvin Johnson for the Lions. You get the football in his hands. If he checks out off the field, he's going to be a gem, a steal, just like this guy Randall Cobb, 5'11", 185, a true playmaker in a sense. They moved him all over the field at Kentucky, so he's a guy that brings a lot of versatility to the offense. What he lacks is the experience at the wide receiver, so he's going to need a little work with his route running, but a Birdie Manuel clone, a guy that's going to come in and make a lot of big plays as a slot wide receiver. Greg Salas is a big physical guy. It's bigger than what he plays, bigger than what his size is, 6'2", 200. Soft hands, very consistent, plays big, but he doesn't have that quickness, and he's not as sudden as you would like a wide receiver. But throw him in there in the slot around the goal line is a guy that's going to make plays consistently, a classic number 2 or 3 wide receiver. Now you look at Niles Paul, a guy that brings big play return ability. He has a lot of quickness. He has long speed. He doesn't have that short intermediate speed, but you see right here, able to run away from the defender from Arizona. A guy that has to improve on his route running, as most young receivers do, but a guy that can make some big plays and give a team a spark in a return game. Now you look at Dwayne Harris, a guy out of East Carolina, 5'10", 200 pounds. He has his shoulder under the quickness right this, right, bang, bang, make a guy miss. He has that amazing ability to make plays down the field, but he's not as consistent as a route runner or wide receiver, so that's something he's going to have to work on, which is why I have him going in the 5th round. Torrey Smith is a guy I think that probably should have stayed another year at Maryland, but one thing you can't ignore is his deep speed, so he has that ability to stretch a defense out. He's growing as a wide receiver. He's still has some polish to go. He's not a hands catcher, catches with his body, but this is a guy that, again, reminds me a lot of Joshua Cribbs. You give him a few years to get this thing going, he's going to be an outstanding target. Now here's some top small school wide receiver targets you want to look out for. Go out to Mount Union, Cecil Shorts, a guy that reminds me a lot of Lance Moore that plays for the Saints. He's very consistent, excellent hands, especially that short area quickness. Now he's a little slender up top, but he needs to add bulk, but as a guy that is going to make a big play, a classic 2 or 3 wide receiver or number 4 in any type of these spread offenses that are being run nowadays. Edmond Gates is a guy out of Abilene Christian. How many big play targets you get out of Abilene Christian? One thing that stands out is his speed and his ability to stretch a defense. You see right here up at the top of the screen, running away from coverage, man coverage. Very, very deep speed. One thing he reminds me a lot of Flipper Anderson that used to play for the Los Angeles Rams back in the day, but this is a guy that you want to bring along, work on his intermediate routes. I've never seen somebody run a speed route like this at the bottom of the screen to perfection, catch the football, make the first guy miss, and pull away from secondary players that are usually fast, but this guy has a lot of speed. Now here's some of his top sleeper wide receiver targets in this draft. Terrence Oliver out of LSU had the problem of playing with a not so good quarterback in Jordan Jefferson, but you get this guy on the field with a quarterback that's going to get him the football consistently. He's another target that's tall, long, and has long speed. Reminds me a lot of Maurice Stovall. Dane Seisenbacher is a guy that just makes plays. He's very consistent. He's tough, not afraid to go across the middle, and he's consistent, and that's what you need at the next level. A guy that can make big plays. Reminds me a lot of Blair White. May not be a burner, but a guy that is going to come to play week in, week out and help a team out in a pinch. Now for more football game plan draft prospect previews, visit footballgameplan.com/draft or visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/footballgameplan.